ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਸਿੱਖ ਚੈਨਲ ਦੀ ਟੀਮ ਅੱਜ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਸ਼ ਕਵੈਂਟਰੀ ਵਿਖੇ ਪਹੁੰਚੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਬੰਧ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਤੇ ਸਮੂਹ ਸਾਧ ਸੰਗਤ ਦੀ ਕਵੈਂਟਰੀ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਸਹਿਯੋਗ ਨਾਲ ਕਾਫੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਕੀਤੇ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਧੰਨ ਧੰਨ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਦੇਵ ਜੀ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਸ਼ ਪੁਰਬ ਨੂੰ ਮੁੱਖ ਰੱਖਦਿਆਂ ਹੋਇਆਂ 13 ਦਿਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਨਾਮ ਸਿਮਰਨ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਸਿਮਰਨ ਜਾਪ ਰੱਖੇ ਗਏ ਹਨ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਹਰ ਰੋਜ਼ 7 ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ 8 ਵਜੇ ਤੱਕ ਚੱਲਦੇ ਹਨ। ਹਰ ਰੋਜ਼ ਇੱਕ ਨਵਾਂ ਜਥਾ ਆ ਕੇ ਸੰਗਤਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਸਿਮਰਨ ਨਾਲ ਜੋੜਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਏ। ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਨਾਲ ਜੋ 100 ਸਾਲ ਹੋਏ ਹਨ ਵਰਲਡ ਵਾਰ 1 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੋ ਸਿੱਖ ਫੌਜੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਸ਼ਹੀਦੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਕੇ ਇਤਿਹਾਸ ਰਚਿਆ ਸੀਗਾ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਯਾਦ ਕਰਦਿਆਂ ਹੋਇਆਂ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਪ੍ਰਬੰਧਕ ਕਮੇਟੀ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਦੇ ਉਪਰਾਲੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਵਿਖੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਇਹ ਐਗਜੀਬਿਸ਼ਨ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ, ਜਿਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਫੌਜੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਜਿਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਹੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਯਾਦ ਚੇਤੇ ਕਰਦਿਆਂ ਇਤਿਹਾਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਸਾਰਾ ਐਗਜੀਬਿਸ਼ਨ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਏ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਸਾਰੇ ਹੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਕਵੈਂਟਰੀ ਦੀ ਸਮੂਹ ਸਾਧ ਸੰਗਤ ਦੇ ਸਹਿਯੋਗ ਨਾਲ ਤੇ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਪ੍ਰਬੰਧਕ ਕਮੇਟੀ ਦੇ ਸੇਵਾਦਾਰਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਮਿਲ ਜੁਲ ਕੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਕੀਤੇ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ। ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਦੇ ਸੰਗਤ ਹੈਗੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਵਾਉਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਲੱਗ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਸਾਰੇ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ। ਭਾਈ ਗੁਰਦੀਪ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਸ ਟਾਈਮ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਨੇ। ਭਾਈ ਗੁਰਦੀਪ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ, ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਵਰਲਡ ਵਾਰ 1 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਫੌਜੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ 100 ਸਾਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵਰਲਡ ਵਾਰ 1 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਹੀਦੀਆਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਦੇ ਕੇ ਇਤਿਹਾਸ ਰਚਿਆ, ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਐਗਜੀਬਿਸ਼ਨ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਵਿਖੇ, ਤੇ ਧੰਨ ਧੰਨ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਦੇਵ ਜੀ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਭਾਈ ਨੂੰ ਮੁੱਖ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਸ਼ ਪੁਰਬ ਨੂੰ ਮੁੱਖ ਰੱਖਦਿਆਂ ਹੋਇਆ 13 ਦਿਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਾਫੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ। ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਲੱਗ ਰਿਹਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਬਾਰੇ?
ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਨੌਜਵਾਨ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਆ 2 ਹਫ਼ਤੇ ਹੋ ਗਏ, ਇਹਨੀ ਐਕਸੀਬਿਸ਼ਨ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਧੀਆ ਕੀਤੇ ਆ। ਇਸ ਵਿਕੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤੇ ਹੈਗੇ WW1 ਦੇ ਵੈਟਰਨ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਲੜੇ ਸੀਗੇ, ਸ਼ਹੀਦੀ ਪਾਈਆਂ ਸੀਗੀਆਂ। ਪਿਛਲੇ ਹਫ਼ਤੇ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤੇ ਸੀਗੇ, ਹੈਰੀਟੇਜ ਵੀਕ ਸੀਗੀ, ਸੋ ਕੌਵੈਂਟਰੀ 'ਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਸਿੱਖ ਆਏ ਸੀਗੇ। ਸਾਡੇ ਹਿਸਾਬ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਰੇ ਸੰਗਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਖੁਸ਼ ਆ ਵੀ ਇੰਨੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਨਾਲ ਕਰੀ ਜਾਣ ਅਤੇ ਯੰਗਸਟਰਸ ਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਮਿਲਦੀ ਹੈ ਜੀ।
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
ਸਰਦਾਰ ਸੰਤੋਖ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਹਨ। ਇਹ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਦੱਸਣਗੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਫੀਲ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ।
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਜੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਭਾਜੀ ਹੁਣੀ ਕਹਿ ਕੇ ਗਏ ਆ ਵੀ ਨੌਲੇਜ ਬਹੁਤ ਮਿਲਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, ਸਿਰਫ ਨਿਆਣਿਆਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਨਹੀਂ, ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਵਰਗਿਆਂ ਲਈ ਵੀ ਕਾਫੀ ਨੌਲੇਜ ਆ। ਮੈਂ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਜਿਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲੀ ਡਿਸਪਲੇ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ ਵਰਲਡ ਵਾਰ ਵਾਲੇ, ਉਹਦੇ ਐਵਰੀ ਡੀਟੇਲਸ ਦੱਸਿਆ, ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਕੋਸਟ ਵਾਈਜ਼ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਪਰਸੈਂਟੇਜ ਸੀਗੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਦੀ ਕੰਟਰੀਬਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਸੀਗਾ, ਅਤੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਿੰਨੀ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਮਿਨੋਰਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਹੈਗੇ, ਫਿਰ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਇੰਨੀਆਂ ਜਾਣੀ ਕਿ ਸ਼ਹੀਦੀਆਂ ਪਾਈਆਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ। ਸੋ ਸਿੱਖਣ ਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ। ਇੱਕ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਫਿਲਮ ਵੀ ਲਾਈ ਸੀਗੀ, ਮੇਰੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ BBC ਤੋਂ ਕਲਿੱਪ ਕੱਢ ਕੇ ਲਾਈ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਬਹੁਤ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਮਿਲੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ। ਕਿ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਸਾਡੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਸਮਾਂ ਦੇ ਬਾਹਰੋਂ ਆਏ ਸੀਗੇ, ਗੋਰੇ ਆਏ ਸੀਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਏਅਰ ਫੋਰਸ ਕੈਡੈਟਸ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨੇ ਵੀ ਉਹ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਫਿਲਮ ਨਾ 10 ਮਿੰਟ ਦੀ ਦੇਖੀ ਆ, ਦੇ ਰੀਲੀ ਇੰਪਰੈਸ ਵਿਦ ਇਟ। ਅਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਅੱਗੇ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਰੰਟ ਕਮੇਟੀ ਆ, ਯੰਗਸਟਰ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਇਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਧੀਆ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਆ, ਇੱਦਾਂ ਕਰੀ ਜਾਣ ਅਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਸਾਥ ਦੇਵਾਂਗੇ ਜੀ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਖਾਲਸਾ
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਸਾਧ ਸੰਗਤ ਜੀ, ਹੁਣ ਆਪਾਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਐਗਜੀਬਿਸ਼ਨ ਲੱਗਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ ਗੁਰੂ ਘਰ ਵਿਖੇ, ਉਹਦੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਦਰਸ਼ਨ ਕਰਵਾਉਣੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਅਤੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸੇਵਾਦਾਰ ਲੱਗੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਜੀ।
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਗੁਰੂ ਰੂਪ ਗੁਰੂ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਸਾਧ ਸੰਗਤ ਜੀ, ਅੱਜ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਸ਼ ਕੋਵੈਂਟਰੀ ਵਿਖੇ ਇਕੱਤਰ ਹੋਏ ਹਾਂ, ਜੋ ਗੁਰੂ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਬੰਧ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੋ ਆਪਣੇ ਪ੍ਰਬੰਧਕ ਸਾਹਿਬਾਨ ਆ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਆਪਣੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੈ, ਔਰ ਸੰਗਤ ਦੇ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਵੀ ਆ। ਅੱਜ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਜੋ ਵਰਲਡ ਵਾਰ 1 ਦੀ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ 100 ਸਾਲ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਆ, ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਲਈ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖੋਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਰੀ ਐਗਜ਼ੀਬਿਸ਼ਨ ਲੱਗੀ ਆ, ਔਰ ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਅੱਜ ਟਾਕ ਵੀ ਹੋਣੀ ਆ। ਅਤੇ ਉਹ ਜੋ ਟਾਕ ਦੇਣਗੇ ਸਰਦਾਰ ਇੰਦਰਪਾਲ ਸਿੰਘ ਧੰਜਲ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਖੜ੍ਹੇ ਆ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਥੋੜ੍ਹਾ ਬਰੀਫ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੁੱਛੂੰਗਾ ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ। ਸੋ ਇੰਦਰਪਾਲ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੱਸੋ ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ, ਜੇ ਵਰਲਡ ਵਾਰ 1 ਦੀ ਅੱਜ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਟਾਕ ਦੇਣੀ ਆ, ਕੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਸ ਵਿਸ਼ੇ 'ਤੇ ਬੋਲਣਾ ਔਰ ਕੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ?
ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਭਾਅ ਜੀ, ਅਸੀਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਡਾ ਟੌਪਿਕ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹ ਹੈਗਾ ਇੰਡੀਆਜ਼ ਕੰਟਰੀਬਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਇਨ ਵਰਲਡ ਵਾਰ 1।
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਜੀ।
ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਿਰਫ ਸਾਡੀ ਮਾਡਰਨ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਉਹ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਤਾ।
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇੰਨਾ ਪਤਾ ਕਿ ਸਿਰਫ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਐਂਡ ਸਿੱਖ ਸੋਲਜਰਸ ਕੇਮ ਟੂ various fronts, but they don't know the contribution of India in terms of manpower, material and money. ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਤਾ ਕਿ ਉਹਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅਸਰ back home India ਦੇ ਕੀ ਸੀ social political economical impact so ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ talk ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹ ਥੋੜਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਗਹਿਰਾਈ ਜਾਵਾਂਗੇ rather than just sort of looking at the surface of some headline numbers or headlines so it'll be quite a sort of a detailed analysis of the talk ताकि अपनी संगत ਨੂੰ ਉਹ awareness ਹੋ ਸਕੇ ਕਿ ਵੀ ਸਾਡਾ ਕੰਟਰੀਬਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਕੀ ਸੀ ਔਰ ਉਹਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅਸਰ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹ ਸਾਡੀ ਸਿਰਫ ਸੋਸਾਇਟੀ ਤੇ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਿੰਡਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਮੈਂਬਰਸ ਸਾਰੇ ਵਾਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਗਏ ਸੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੇ ਕੀ ਅਸਰ ਪਿਆ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਉੱਥੋਂ ਦੇ ਬਿਕੋਜ਼ ਅੱਜ ਤੱਕ ਕਦੀ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਸੇ ਹਿਸਟੋਰੀਅਨ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤੀ ਕਿ ਬਈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦਾ ਪੱਖ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਜਾਵੇ and through the eyes of Indian masses and Indian soldiers so we want to sort of perhaps get a feel of from their point of view rather than ਇਸੀ ਕਿ ਮਤਲਬ ਅਸੀਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵੈਸਟਰਨ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਅਸੀਂ ਪੜ੍ਹਨੀ ਹੈ
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਪੁੱਛੂੰਗਾ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵਰਲਡ ਵਾਰ 1 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਿੱਖ ਆਏ ਆ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਤੋਂ ਉਹ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਸੀ ਜਾਂ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਤੋਂ ਕਿੰਨੇ % ਕੁਛ ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਹੈ ਆਪ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਕੋਲ
ਉਹਦਾ ਡਿਟੇਲ ਬ੍ਰੇਕਡਾਊਨ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਬਾਕੀ 60% ਆਫ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਬ੍ਰਿਟਿਸ਼ ਆਰਮੀ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਤੋਂ ਆਈ ਸੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਿੱਖ ਕਾਫੀ ਮੈਜੋਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਮੁਸਲਮਾਨ ਵੀ ਸੀ ਬਲੂਚੀ ਵੀ ਸੀ ਗੜਵਾਲੀ ਵੀ ਸੀ ਪਰ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਿੱਖ ਉਹ ਅਸੀਂ ਟਾਕ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਰੀ ਡਿਟੇਲ ਐਨਾਲਿਸਿਸ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਵਰ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਕਿ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਸੋਲਜਰ ਆਏ ਕਿੱਥੇ ਗਏ ਕਿਹੜੇ ਵਾਰ ਕੈਂਪ 'ਤੇ ਗਏ ਸੋ ਉਹ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਿਰਫ ਸਾਰਾ ਅੱਜ ਉਹਦਾ ਵਿਸ਼ੇ ਕਵਰ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਜੀ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਇੰਦਰਪਾਲ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਹੁਣ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੁਰੂ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਜੋ ਪ੍ਰਬੰਧਕ ਆ ਕਮੇਟੀ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਸੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਪਾਸ ਭਾਈ ਜਤਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਖੜ੍ਹੇ ਆ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਪੁੱਛਾਂਗੇ ਭਾਈ ਜਤਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਪਰਾਲਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਆ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਮਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਇਆ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਸੰਗਤ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਨੌਲੇਜ ਦੇਈਏ
ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਭਾਜੀ ਮੈਂ ਥੋੜ੍ਹਾ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ 'ਚ ਮੈਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਲਾਂਗਾ ਫਿਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸੁਣਦੇ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗ ਜੂ Yeah, so the question was what made us think of this well when we came into the committee we had an idea that we want to reach out to the wider audience yes our sangat our community don't really know much about this subject there's more interest generating on this subject but what we also want to do is make sure that the wider communities know the contributions of the Sikhs what we've done throughout the world where our place is in world history as well so this is why we wanted to do this project we were fortunate enough to make contact with Indrapal Paji and the National Sikh Museum and they've given us this fantastic exhibition we've had schools come and visit this exhibition so there's a program of work going on right now where we're reaching out to schools there's a schools program they'll come in they'll visit the exhibition they'll learn about the Sikhs contribution to world history World War I we also tell them about the Sikh ethos what Sikhi is all about as part of this learning program also this is our engagement with the wider community as well we Sikhi is all about looking outwardly reaching out to those who need help and these are the sort of things that as a committee we want to do and this is with it being the 100 years of World War I we felt that this was a perfect opportunity to do this project a lot of hard work has gone into this and as you can see it's a fantastic exhibition there's been a great feedback from this exhibition and we look forward to doing more of this type of work
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਜੀ ਸਾਧ ਸੰਗਤ ਜੀ ਆਪ ਜੀ ਨੇ ਸੁਣਿਆ ਕਿ ਕਈ ਸਕੂਲਾਂ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਵਿਜ਼ਿਟ ਕਰਕੇ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਬੰਧਕੀ ਕਮੇਟੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਸਿਆਣੇ ਬੰਦਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੈ ਉੱਥੇ ਨੌਜਵਾਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਲੋੜ ਆ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਨੌਜਵਾਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਦੇ ਉਪਰਾਲੇ ਕਰਨੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਸੋਹਣਾ ਉਪਰਾਲਾ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੀਤਾ ਆ ਭਾਈ ਜਤਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਇਹ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਦਿਨ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਇਸ ਐਗਜ਼ੀਬਿਸ਼ਨ ਲੱਗੇ ਨੂੰ ਔਰ ਕਿੰਨੀ ਕੁ ਸੰਗਤ ਵਿਜ਼ਿਟ ਕਰ ਚੁੱਕੀ ਹੈ
ਓਕੇ
ਕਿੱਦਣ ਇਹ ਫਿਨਿਸ਼ ਹੋਣਾ
ਓਕੇ ਰਾਈਟ ਕਾਫੀ ਸੰਗਤ ਆਇਓ ਇੱਥੇ ਦੇਖਣ ਨੂੰ ਬਿਫੋਰ ਦਿਸ ਐਗਜ਼ੀਬਿਸ਼ਨ ਇਟਸ ਬੀਨ ਅ 2-week exhibition so ਪਿਛਲੇ ਹਫਤੇ last week we had the interfaith week where we did an exhibition on the Sikhs when they came to England ਜਦੋਂ Coventry ਨੂੰ ਆਏ ਸੀ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਵਾਰੀ so that was an exhibition we did and that was greatly received we've had schools visitors we've had counsellors and there's a lot of interest being generated and that was in partnership with the Herbert Art Gallery and then obviously this week because it's the Heritage Week we've procured this exhibition this is in partnership with Sakre with the National Sikh Museum and Indrapal Ganjal's so a lot of effort has gone into this lots of effort behind the scenes, and there's again we've had schools visitors today. We had over 60 children from Leamington School come and see this exhibition. We've got a school visiting us tomorrow, and we've got people from the outside community also coming.
ਇਹ ਕਿੱਦਣ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਐਗਜ਼ੀਬਿਸ਼ਨ ਫਿਨਿਸ਼ ਹੋਣੀ ਹੈ?
Yeah, so it started on Monday and it's going to finish tomorrow. So that's Friday.
2 ਵੀਕਾਂ ਲਈ ਸੀ?
Well, this exhibition was for 1 week, but the whole we had two exhibitions. Last week was Interfaith Wala, and this week is the World War I. So it's finishing on Friday.
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜਤਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਸੰਗਤ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ। ਹੁਣ ਬਹੁਤਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਸੰਗਤ ਦੇ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮਿਲੇ, ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਵੀ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਵੱਡਾ ਰੋਲ ਸੀਗਾ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਹੈ ਨਾ।
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
ਇਹ ਚੰਗੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸੰਗਤ।
ਇਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਚੰਗੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਪੜ੍ਹਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਸਕੂਲੇ, ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਕੂਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਪੜ੍ਹਦੇ ਸੀ, ਨਾਲੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਵਰਲਡ ਵਾਰ 1 ਦਾ ਟੌਪਿਕ ਆਇਆ ਸੀ, ਮੈਂ ਕਦੇ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਇਹ ਸੁਣਿਆ, ਕੋਈ ਨੌਲੇਜ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਉੱਥੇ, ਪਰ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਸਕੂਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਹੈ ਨਾ। ਕਿਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਦੇ ਕੰਟਰੀਬਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਕੀ ਸੀ, ਹੈ ਨਾ। ਮੈਂ ਇਹੀ ਸੋਚਿਆ ਯੂਰੋਪੀਅਨਸ ਨੇ, ਗੋਰੇ ਨੇ ਇਹੀ ਕੰਮ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ, ਅਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਇਨਵੋਲਵਮੈਂਟ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਛੋਟੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਸੀ, ਹੈ ਨਾ।
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਜੀ, ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ। ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਵੈਂਟਰੀ ਦੀ ਸੰਗਤ ਆ, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੋਂ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਦੇ ਉਪਰਾਲੇ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਰੋਗੇ। ਹੁਣ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਭਾਈ ਦਲਵਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਕਮੇਟੀ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਆ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਲਵਾਂਗੇ।
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਹਾਂਜੀ,
ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵਰਲਡ ਵਾਰ ਬਾਰੇ ਆ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਕੀ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ? ਜੋ 100 ਸਾਲ ਹੋ ਚੁੱਕਾ ਹੈ, ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਐਗਜ਼ੀਬਿਸ਼ਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਮੇਟੀ ਨੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਲਾਇਆ ਉਪਰਾਲਾ ਕਰਕੇ।
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ, ਇਹ ਕਾਫੀ ਐਜੂਕੇਸ਼ਨਲ ਚੀਜ਼ ਆ। ਅਸੀਂ ਦੇਖੋ ਹੁਣ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਜਤਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਕਹਿ ਕੇ ਹਟਿਆ ਆ, ਅਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਸਕੂਲੇ ਪੜ੍ਹੇ ਸੀਗੇ, ਨਾਲੇ ਮਾਡਰਨ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ 'ਚ ਵੀ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਵਰਲਡ ਵਾਰ 1 ਵਰਲਡ ਵਾਰ 2 ਦੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਆ, ਪਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਐਥਨਿਕ ਮਾਈਨੋਰਿਟੀ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੰਟਰੀਬਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਆ, ਉਹ ਕਦੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਮੋੜੇ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਨਾ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਬੁੱਕਸ 'ਚ। ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਕੰਟਰੀਬਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਵਾਈਟ ਵਾਸ਼ ਹੋਈ ਆ, ਐਬਰਸ਼ਡ ਹੋਈ ਆ। ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਆ, ਜਦੋਂ ਲੜਾਈ ਜਿੱਤੇ ਵੀ ਸੀ, ਜਦੋਂ ਪਾਰਿਸ਼ ਮਾਰਚ ਵੀ ਹੋਇਆ ਸੀਗਾ, ਉਦੋਂ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਾਮਨਵੈਲਥ ਤੋਂ ਆਏ ਸੀਗੇ, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਰਵਿਸ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਰੱਖ ਲਿਆ ਸੀ, ਸਿਰਫ ਯੂਰੋਪੀਅਨ ਨੂੰ ਮਾਰਚ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀਗਾ। ਇੱਦਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਨਾ ਹੁਣ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਹੁਣ ਹੌਲੀ ਹੌਲੀ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਾਡੇ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਦਾ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਣ ਲੱਗ ਪਿਆ। ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ, ਯੂਰੋਪੀਅਨ ਵਾਲਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰਾਊਡ ਹੋਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਸਾਡੀ ਕੀ ਕੰਟਰੀਬਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਸੀ। ਇਹ ਛੋਟੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਲੜਾਈ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ, ਕਾਫੀ ਨੁਕਸਾਨ ਵੀ ਦੁਨੀਆ 'ਤੇ ਹੋਇਆ ਸੀਗਾ, ਐਂਡ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਹੋਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਕਾਫੀ ਕੰਟਰੀਬਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਸੀ ਨਾ। ਸਾਡਾ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸ਼ਹੀਦੀਆਂ ਕੁਰਬਾਨੀਆਂ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਸੀ, ਉਹ ਉਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਜੀਂਦੀਆਂ ਸੀ ਨਾ।
ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਹੁਣ ਦੇਖੋ, ਇਹ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਅੱਗੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਂਦੀ, ਤੇ ਕਮ ਸੇ ਕਮ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਕਿ ਇਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਐਗਜ਼ੀਬਿਸ਼ਨ ਲਾ ਕੇ ਅਵੇਅਰਨੈਸ ਦੇ ਸਕੀਏ। ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਜੀ, ਹੋਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਗੱਲ ਕਹਿਣੀ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਤਾਂ?
ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਬਸ ਸੰਗਤਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਸ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ, ਬਸ ਹੁਣ ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ ਦਿਨ ਹੀ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ ਆ, ਐਗਜ਼ੀਬਿਸ਼ਨ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਦੇਖਣ ਆਓ। ਫਰਾਈਡੇ ਸ਼ਾਮ ਨੂੰ ਐਗਜ਼ੀਬਿਸ਼ਨ ਆਬਵੀਅਸਲੀ ਮੁੜ ਕੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਰੈਸਟਿੰਗ ਪਲੇਸ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਡਾਰਬੀਚ ਮਿਊਜ਼ੀਅਮ 'ਚ ਜਾਣਾ, ਉੱਥੇ ਚਲ ਜਾਣਾ। ਫਿਰ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸੰਗਤਾਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਆ ਕੇ ਐਗਜ਼ੀਬਿਸ਼ਨ ਦੇਖੋ।
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਜੀ, ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ। ਹੁਣ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਮੇਟੀ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਸਰਦਾਰ ਅਮਰਜੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਘੰਗੂੜਾ ਆ, ਉਹ 1-2 ਸ਼ਬਦ ਇਸ ਵਰਲਡ ਵਾਰ ਦੇ ਐਗਜ਼ੀਬਿਸ਼ਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਲਾਇਆ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਪਰਾਲਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਮੇਟੀ ਨੇ, ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਦੱਸਣਗੇ।
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਘਰ ਦੀ ਪ੍ਰਬੰਧਕ ਕਮੇਟੀ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਧੀਆ ਕੰਮ ਕੀਤਾ ਆ, ਅਤੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਹੁਣ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਾ ਆ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਡੇ 60% ਇੱਥੇ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਤੋਂ ਆਰਮੀ ਆਈ ਸੀ, ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ 60% ਆਪਣੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਭਾਈਚਾਰਾ ਸੀਗਾ। ਪਰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇੱਥੇ ਇੱਕ ਬੜੇ ਦੁੱਖ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਨਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਆ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦਿੱਲੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਤੋਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਹੱਕਾਂ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ, ਉੱਥੇ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲਾਂਭੇ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਆ। ਪਰ ਇੱਥੇ 60% ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਸੁਣਿਆ, ਅਸੀਂ ਖੁਦ ਸ਼ੌਕ ਹੋਏ ਹਾਂ। ਅਸੀਂ ਕਦੇ ਇੰਡੀਆ 'ਚ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਪੜ੍ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀਗੀ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ 60% ਇੱਥੇ ਯੋਗਦਾਨ ਦਿੱਤਾ। ਤੋ ਸਾਰੇ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਅਵੇਅਰਨੈਸ ਹੋਈ ਆ, ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਹੱਥ ਜੋੜ ਕੇ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ 60% ਯੋਗਦਾਨ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਅਤੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਹੱਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਸੱਚ ਦੇ ਲੜੀਏ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
ਸਤਿ ਸੰਗਤ ਜੀ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਹੋਰ ਤਾਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਨੌਲੇਜ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ, ਜੋ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਧੀਆ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਪਰਾਲਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਆ। ਹੁਣ ਸੰਗਤ ਦੇ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਇੱਥੇ ਖੜ੍ਹੇ ਆ, ਸਰਦਾਰ ਸੁੱਚਾ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ, ਇਹ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਕੀ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਜਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਏਜ ਵੀ ਕਾਫੀ ਆ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਦੇਖੀਆਂ ਕਾਫੀ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਗੱਲ ਓਪਨਲੀ ਕਹਿ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਧ ਸੰਗਤ ਨੂੰ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕਰੋ।
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਪਹਿਲੀ ਗੱਲ ਤਾਂ ਇਹ ਕਿ ਜੋ ਕੁਛ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਦੇਖਿਆ, ਇਹ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀਗਾ ਵੀ ਇੰਨਾ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਨੇ ਐਡੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਮਾਰ ਕੇ ਮਾਰੇ ਆ, ਯੋਗਦਾਨ ਦਿੱਤਾ। ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਅਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ 'ਤੇ ਦੇਖ ਕੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਖੁਸ਼ ਹੋਏ ਹਾਂ। ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਅਤੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੇਖੋ ਵੀ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬੜੀ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਆ ਵੀ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਦਾ ਯੋਗਦਾਨ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਪ੍ਰਾਊਡ ਆ। ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹ ਡਿਊਕ ਨੇ ਸਿਰ 'ਤੇ ਪੱਗ ਬੰਨੀ ਹੋ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਸਿੱਖ ਪੱਗ ਗੋਰੇ ਪੱਗ ਘੱਟ ਬੰਨ੍ਹਦੇ ਆ। ਉਸ ਟਾਈਮ 'ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਪੱਗ ਬੰਨ੍ਹੀ ਹੈ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਉਹ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ 'ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਮਾਣ ਆ। ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੁਰਬਾਨੀ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੈ।
ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਮਝਦੇ
Even
ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਮੇਟੀ ਦੇ
ਬਹੁਤ ਸੋਹਣਾ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਆ, ਬਹੁਤ ਸੋਹਣਾ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ
ਸੋ
ਆ
ਠੀਕ
ਹੈ ਜੀ। ਤੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਇਹ ਉਸ ਲੜਾਈ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਡੇ ਬਾਬਾ ਜੀ 5 ਭਰਾ ਸੀ,
ਅੱਛਾ ਜੀ
ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੱਡੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਬਾਬਾ ਜੀ ਬਾਬਾ ਖੁਸ਼ਹਾਲ ਸਿੰਘ,
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ
ਹੈ ਜੀ। ਉਹ ਇਸ ਲੜਾਈ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਹੀਦ ਹੋਏ ਆ।
ਅੱਛਾ
ਹੁਣ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਪਿੰਡ ਵਾਲਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਰਲ ਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਂ ਤੇ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਪਿੰਡ ਬਣਾਇਆ ਆ।
ਅੱਛਾ ਠੀਕ
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਪਿੰਡ
ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ। ਸੋ ਸਤਸੰਗ ਜੀ ਸਤਸੰਗ ਜੀ ਹੁਣ ਆਪਣੇ ਪਾਸ ਬੀਬੀ ਜੀ ਆਏ, ਉਹ ਵੀ ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਥੋੜੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਦੇਣਗੇ। ਬੀਬੀ ਜੀ ਥੋੜੀ ਅੱਗੇ ਆ ਕੇ ਤਾਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
ਹਾਂਜੀ
ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਵਰਲਡ ਵਾਰ ਬਾਰੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੀ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ?
ਓਕੇ ਮੈਂ ਇੰਗਲਿਸ਼
English
ਵਿੱਚ ਦੱਸ
ਕਹਿ
ਦਵਾਂ,
ਦਿਓ, 100
ਮੈਂ
ਸਾਲ
ਕਹਿ
ਹੋ
ਦਵਾਂ
ਗਏ ਨਾ।
ਪੰਜਾਬੀ। ਅੱਛਾ 100 years ਹੋ ਗਏ commemoration from World War I 1914 to 19, and previously there's been no mention in any of our curriculum projects. What I do as part of the local authority is, in the past I've taken students from different backgrounds to Belgium, to Ypres, to see the contribution that Indian soldiers made. And at that time there was no partition. It was a colonial army, of which 1% of the population in India was Sikhs, but 25% of Sikhs were in the army. So our contribution was quite a big contribution. And I think it's about hidden history, and it's about how we should learn from that. What's also really interesting is that if we do not take time to build on this legacy, we will lose those stories. We have people in our Gurdwara, in our Sangat, whose fathers, grandfathers fought in the Second World War. So I'm offering a challenge to young people out there, is to interview those parents, relatives, and get their stories, whether it's through film, through story. We must not let the memory die. And the reason why we do commemorations, they always say it's never to happen again. But history repeats itself, and I think we do not learn from those lessons. So another challenge is, how can we look at war, but look at peaceful ways to end those war and conflicts throughout the world? We have a wonderful man here. But his father, his whole family was involved in the military. Now, those are the kind of messages that we want to do. We want to actually record for posterity those stories so that we do learn and never forget them. Okay, my God.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਸਾਧ ਸੰਗਤ ਜੀ ਹੁਣ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਟਾਕ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋਣੀ ਆ, ਹੁਣ ਆਪਾਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਾਂ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹੋਣਾ ਆ। ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਜੋ ਸਰਦਾਰ ਇੰਦਰਪਾਲ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਧੰਜਲ ਇੱਥੇ ਖੜੇ ਆ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਦੱਸਣੀਆਂ। ਸੋ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਫਤਿਹ ਬੁਲਾਉਂਦੇ ਆ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
Very briefly about Legacy of Elder Society, who we are. We are voluntary-based, the community-based voluntary organization. We launched this society in 2014 exactly for the same purpose as you were discussing there, that we don't know much about our history. And there was a BBC program, I think 22-episode program, broadcast in 2014, telling about World War I. Which again, I had an interest in that, so I watched it. But I realized that they gave 1 hour episode to Americans, 1 hour episode to ANZAC, which is Australia, New Zealand, and 1 hour to Canadian, and 4 minutes to rest of the Commonwealth forces, including Indian soldiers. So that again, I felt really annoyed. Is that as far as I knew at the time, that our contribution is quite significant, but I didn't know the detail at the time. So I said, well, if nobody is going to tell our history, so why don't we learn ourselves and share with others? So that's how this project started in 2014. And then many young people joined us in this venture. And I'm really proud that where we are today. So in 2015, we launched this exhibition, which you are seeing today, and plus more. And we had many other artifacts from the museums as well. Exhibition was launched in Reading Museum in 2015 by then High Commissioner and Lord Lieutenant of Berkshire. And that exhibition was nominated for Collection Trust Award 2015, so we were really proud. So that was our first attempt for this exhibition. So since then, we moved on. This exhibition was hosted in the Houses of Parliament in last year, March. So again, we had a very positive feedback, and many MPs and House of Lords members came to me and sort of saying, oh, we didn't know that. So it's not only us, even the sort of British community, even though some are history experts, they have studied history as a subject, but they didn't know much about India's contribution, apart from Commonwealth Force. And which is sad that our whole history has been encapsulated in two words, Commonwealth Forces, and that too appear at a footnote. So again, so this is our effort. And what we do, we undertake a research on Indian and Sikh soldier. Our focus, being a Sikh, so our focus is very much on a Sikh soldier, but we can't sort of separate. We also look at all other Indian soldiers as well. So it's India's contribution. So we deliver 3 talks. This one, which again we're going to talk about at a macro level, so that it gives you a sort of overview, an overall picture, a helicopter view of the whole war and what happened in terms of the significant manpower, material and monies and supplies came from India. And as a result of that, impact on India at the time. Also, sort of, we undertake trips, we undertake a training program. So last year we ran a fantastic training program for our young volunteers. So what we are doing is we are building capacity within our own community to ensure that we don't rely upon professionals, because anybody can pay the money and get the movie made or graphic design done and so on. So we are bringing those skills within our community so that young people, now you will be really pleased to see the cover of this book, which we published in 2015 about World War I, and it has all our research, all the facts and figures, which you will not get anywhere in any book. This cover has been designed by 17-year-old young volunteer. So we're really proud of our youngest volunteer is a 13-year-old who actually designed the logo for our latest exhibition about Sikh martial history, which was launched in July in Slough. So again, so we are continuously working, and our approach and how do we sort of share through exhibition, through talks, through books, through other resources, Q&A sessions, workshops, and so on, so that when you learn, so you can tell other people what you know. And that's the concept. Okay. Right. Let's straight away get into that. Perhaps a shortage of time, so I'll try to be a little fast, but please stop me sort of if anything. Okay. Now, as we all know, World War I, it was a watershed moment in the history. And it changed the social and the political map of the world forever. The world we live in today was pretty much shaped 100 years ago. But sadly, we don't know much about what happened and so on. So again, so that's our focus today. And the gentleman mentioned about King George V wearing a turban. So he was a regimental commander. So as a regimental, again, you may have sort of seen some pictures where the British officers from Sikh regiment are wearing turban. And they're wearing different turban representing the different regiments, 47th, Raturi Sikh, and so forth, kind of thing. Okay. And you may have also sort of seen this poster in World War I, Lord Kitchener, like pointing out that that famous iconic poster. I want to give me your men, money, and material. So that's what Lord Kitchener's famous. Okay. Right. So a lot of people ask me, why India joined the war? How come they volunteer when the English were not? They didn't want to volunteer for the World War I. They were forced to join the army and go to the sort of trenches and so on. But despite agitation in India for the self-rule, overwhelmingly response in India was very positive and favorable to the British cause. And again, so all political parties, all media then. So it's very important to understand what was happening 100 years ago. So what was the environment, the political, the social environment like, so that we can have a better understanding, right? So it's not just simply delve in numbers, so many casualties and so many medals and so many, sort of shahidi and so on. We need to understand the context. So this talk hopefully sort of help us to do. And not only that, but in the sort of Indian press. So there was not many sort of negative coverage and so on. So so the whole atmosphere in India was very much positive, supporting the British cause at the time. Not only that, but one member of Indian Legislative Council, which is equivalent to the Parliament now, actually sort of says that if India has to be free, independent country, we need to take a place in the world and discharge our responsibilities. Okay. So not only that, but 700 plus Maharajas in India. Because if you are aware of the Indian history, so 2/3 was directly controlled by British and 1/3 was controlled through these 700 plus Raja Maharajas and Nizams and so on. They were all favoring and supporting because the king made a call for help. And everyone sort of wanted to help as much as they can. And we will sort of look at it a bit more detail, which again, Aga Khan wrote 100 years ago, sort of, he's not surprised because that is, and if you look at the sort of a Sikh ethos, if anybody comes and asks for help, we are prepared to give our life. In our own history sort of is full of that, our gurus' sacrifices and so on. So that was the atmosphere 100 years ago in India. So it's important to understand, it's very important because sometimes you hear these negative blogs, comments, and these are out of ignorance that, oh, Goryaan di war si. Sort of, that's the excuse. But they need to understand why and what happened at the time. Okay. Now, the perception, as somebody mentioned, is the World War I was fought in Europe. That was not the case. Yep. There are many armies who were involved in World War I, and they were fighting in sort of unknown territories all around the world. But for India, it was truly a global war because this was the first time when the Indian soldiers in such a large number fought in Europe. Okay. So let's have a look at, so India sent during 1914 to 1918 7 expeditionary forces, okay, which is known as Force A, B, C, D, and E, and F, and then South China operations there. Again, it's very crucial to understand because people think, oh, mainly sort of even you ask young kids here, and they were surprised. One young lad, sort of a British guy, asked me, oh, I didn't realize there was a camel was used in World War I. Yes, the camel division from India took part in Mesopotamia. So again, we need to sort of raise their awareness, but before that, we need to raise our understanding of what was happening. Now, number of soldiers. So again, tell you by country, and if you look at Mesopotamia, 675,000 plus Indian soldiers were involved in the war. Mesopotamia war is known as Indian War because it was funded by India. The manpower predominantly was from India and so on. But people here, historians, because they were so focusing on trenches here, they were not focusing on the other theaters of war in the world. Okay. Now, let's look at sort of a little bit more perspective compared to other dominions. Now, India's contribution is significantly more than any other dominion put together. Okay. 1.5 million. That's not an insignificant number. And it's worth more than those 2 words, Commonwealth forces, for that. 1 in 6 soldier was from Indian subcontinent. Okay. Sikhs, less than 2%, was over 20% in the British Army at the time, okay, during that war. And the Sikh casualties, Sikh soldier casualties in World War I and II was just under 50%, sort of around 50% of their casualty, disproportionate to the numbers. Okay, so again, we are proud, but we need to understand that how to put things in perspective over World War I, because there are many other soldiers from many other countries died in great numbers. So let's not forget, overall context. In that context, but for India, it was a huge number for that again. Yep. Now, not only the sort of fighting men, which India provided, but nearly which was 1 million, but also 500,000 support personnel. Because we don't think, we always talk soldiers, because that comes to our mind, soldiers. But India provided nearly 500,000 support personnel. And again, you wonder, sort of, who were they? Right? Look at Indian medical services, doctors, surgeons, porters, assistant surgeons. These are the numbers which were released in 2014 by the Government of India paper, which is the British Government of India paper from what we call known as Calcutta papers, because then the government's headquarters was in Calcutta over there. Indian Medical Services paper. Veterinary. When you're talking about the cavalry, so you need the support personnel of veterinarian and the field depots, field hospital for animals, horses, and so on. There was a wonderful picture published in Daily Mirror where sort of a Sikh cavalry, a Sikh soldier tending his horse in New Forest, near Hampshire, that direction. That photo was published in Reading local paper. And caption was, East meet West. So again, we don't know much about sort of Indian soldier coming here. You may have sort of seen a wonderful photograph of a sort of old Sikh soldier washing his utensils after lunch. That was taken in Hampshire, in this country, over there. Okay. Technical staff. India provided sort of a significant amount of military works, railways, inland water transport, or in telecommunication signals, sort of a lot of people, 150,000 people. Post and telegraph. Okay. 4,000 in the field post office. They came from, and they were multilingual, because the Indian army was not homogeneous army. There were so many different languages spoken by the Indian soldiers and so on. So again, sort of telegrapher and so on. The main role of these 400 post office staff is to read every single letter, translate it, and identify if there's anything which is a negative regarding either against the British government, or it gives this sort of a clue of the state of the war, so they would censor it. They will not let it pass through. So hence, the family did not know a letter has been written, but it is never reached to them. Okay. Transport and supply. So the Indian transport personnel played a very crucial and significant role there in Indian supply. Indian labor corps. Again, so carpenter, cooks, tailors, all those trades, they came with the Indian labor corps. Okay. Some of the examples, some of the photographs perhaps you may have seen in the exhibition, or you will see there, where Indian Signal Corps are laying telegraph poles along the sort of canal in France. Dehradun Brigade testing their telegraph equipment, and again in Egypt laying a military railway line to take the sort of a military supply to the front. Here's a sort of Indian soldier is checking the cable in a barren landscape. And you can see for miles and miles there's nothing there, and an Indian soldier is checking that there's no breakage in the cable and so on. So it tells you the role they were playing 100 years ago. So it's not only the soldiers fighting, but equally support labor corps. Now on the left-hand pictures, this picture was given to us by Australian War Museum. And it's a Gallipoli where on both sides there is a ravine. On one side there was the Ottoman Empire, which is the Turkish forces, and on the other side was the Allied forces. And the Indian Labour Corps' role is to provide equipment, take the supply to all, including Australia, New Zealand, and so on. And that was the most dangerous place in Gallipoli. And many, many labourers, they were not soldiers. They didn't have the arms, but they died for their cause. And same way, again, sort of the whole equipment is moved from Baghdad to Samarra, and here sort of you can see this English guy and sort of a Sikh soldier sitting there and moving towards Near-Fenj in France and so on. So there was a good camaraderie, and many of you may have noticed or may already know that if you talk to an elder English soldier, they would know more about Sikh soldier than actually perhaps we do or rest of the population do, because they serve together. So that bond is still continuing. Now, that was a sort of a manpower. We talked about the manpower. But not many people know about the material in the supply came from India. Now, that's a wonderful story, which, again, sort of part of our research, we brought out such a huge data, which, again, is a sort of listed in the book as well here. It's the ordnance. That was just the first 6 months India supplied 70 million rounds of ammunition. Leather, 10 row, horse saddles, those leather bags. India sort of provided 2.2 million of army boots came from India, made in India, came from India, supplied to the army, and there. Again, jute. Yeah. When you think about World War I, what comes to mind? Trenches. And when you talk about trenches, you think about sandbags. And sandbags, where those bags came from? They were made of jute. And where the jute came from? India, especially in northeast India, Calcutta, Bengal, Assam, that sort of a side came from there. Now, it's a fantastic story. If you go to Dundee in Scotland, you still will see the sign of a jute factory, because most of the jute trader in India were Scottish. So you still can go there and you can research the history of the town, and you'll find a lot of information about jute industry and the raw material coming from India. So there's a lot of connections which we don't know much about there. Okay? So 400 million yards of jute clothes and bags and so on. Textile clothing. India was sort of quite ahead in textile at the time, 100 years ago. Right? Woolen clothes and so on, total value of 137 billion tents. New factories were established in Fatehgarh and in Madras. 5 million yards of tent canvas was manufactured there, and nearly 150,000 tents were sent through India. Timber bamboo, you saw just one picture of laying the railway sleepers. That, and plus also the telegraph poles, those bamboo poles and so on, came from India. All the bridge material and so on, on the rivers. Iron and steel. High-grade iron ore, which was mined in central India and Andhra Pradesh, was supplied here, and you see a lot of photographs of women, British women, working in armament factories, working on those steel shell, those bombs. That iron ore was supplied by India, most of it supplied by India from Andhra Pradesh there, which is high-grade iron ore there. So you can see the sort of a connection, it's not only the manpower, but the material. Transport. Now, it doesn't sort of register with us. It's, India buying engines from England or other country. No, India supplied 224 locomotive engines for the war. And so many different sort of types of vehicles and so on. Medical supplies. Again, so it's very hard to comprehend that India was the source of so many material in its supply in the war, which nobody knows till now at the moment. You look at the sort of X-ray machines, field hospital, hospital equipment, furniture, and not only that, but the various type of plague vaccination, and all those, I think many of my generation people and perhaps older than me remember about those brown colors, sort of what you call iodine, for wounds and bomb shells and so shrapnel wounds and so on. Sort of again, India supplied from Kasauli and from Bombay lab from there as well. Electrical engineering plants and building. Not only they supplied, but they supplied the sort of engineers and staff to operate many of these plants there. It's raw material, construction material, everything. Food stuff. Now that's very interesting. Food stuff. India was actually suffering from the food shortage at the time, 100 years ago. And still, this much food was supplied here to England as a supplement to the home production so that there is no problem or issue here with the soldiers, so that there is no shortage of food. Otherwise, there could be, sort of issues and so on, at the expense of Indian population. And then Prime Minister Lloyd George, what did he say? He says, he said that in the Parliament, right? The people here did not suffer greatly because of this shipment from India. But what he did not say is that what happened in India. We will touch upon that in our conversation. Animal, livestock. You have seen one of the photographs where an Indian soldier is taking sheep on his shoulder, perhaps, so don't know if it's a halal or jatka or whatever it is. So again, you can see that sort of cavalry. Went to our cavalry, 86,000 horses, mules, ponies, dairy cattle, and so on. So again, water transport. That's again, we don't think about Navy's role in World War I, and especially Indians' Navy role, because it's very important to understand that India's Navy role was to keep the flow of men and material from India coming to all the war fronts. So they were clearing the mines, they were making sure, they were escorting, they were transporting the material and the soldiers and so on. But their role is never mentioned in any book or any program in the history, the role they played. Very crucial, very important role. They played that. Again, and not only that, but also the Royal Navy used the Bombay docks for repair work, for refitting work. So a number of hospital ships were, again, refitted and so on. So that's roughly 3.7 million tons of supplies were shipped from India. One thing about British Army is a good thing from a historian point of view is that they are the biggest bureaucrat. So they record everything. And so this is the information nugget for a historian who wants to do research to find out more, to the point where you see the service record of a soldier. They will start saying why they were discharged. They had a wound on their left leg, 2 inches from the elbow. So that's the kind of sort of detail. So again, and the war diaries and so on, which were released in 2014, 2015 to read. So 3.9, and 229 additional vessels were chartered. Nearly 6,000 journeys were made from Bombay. 5,000 journeys were made from Karachi, and 483 from Calcutta. They were mainly from jute, because jute was coming from Calcutta port via sort of a Sri Lanka route and sort of coming there. Okay. You can well imagine, that corridor on the sort of Indian Ocean and a Bay of Bengal and so on, and then coming to sort of here in Europe was very busy. Okay, so now we talked about manpower, we talked about the supply and so on, but how the war was financed. These two photographs, which you see here somewhere, okay, this was a recruitment poster printed by, I think, one of the parliamentary committee here 100 years ago, and it appeared in every country, Australia, Canada, India, and so on, because they needed soldiers. So they were looking for sort of soldiers to recruit and so on. This is in Tamil language. Tamil poster, sort of telling people that you're going to get good salary and so on. I think perhaps there's a poster you may have on that panel. There's a poster there, London ki sair mufat. So this is like coercion. So they are making or painting a rosy picture. That soldier, you don't need to worry about that. It's nothing sort of. It's not dangerous, nothing. You just go there and you sort of see London free of charge. And if you look at the picture over there, that for all the sort of girls from Paris. So you will see those. So that's how the propaganda works in war. Because war and propaganda, both goes hand in hand, and so on. And then again, raising funds, war loans, asking for gold, money, bond, post office bonds. You look at Bengali, Gujarati, in Urdu, in Tamil, and so So these are the all 100-year-old posters which appeared in India, in various magazines, India newspaper at the time, is to raise money. So India provided, in terms of money, so let's look at it. So these were the charities which were operating in India 100 years ago. Many of these charities actually are from here. So they are another branch, Indian branch was raising funds there. You can see that Silver Wedding Fund, which basically sort of, it was King George V and the Queen Anne Mary, sort of their Silver Wedding Fund they raised. And this is I mean, we got the detail of each charity, how much they raised, and we got a lot of detail of princes and maharajas and so on, who gave what. And we have listed quite a lot of detail of state by state. One maharaja gave, loaned his Rolls Royces. What are you going to do with the Rolls Royces in war? But he offered that. So the economic and the financial contribution, India gave 100 million completely free. That was from India Exchequer. Then the cost of additional expenditure was 146 million. 360 million towards the imperial expenditure. Over 200 million India paid for. We looked at all those list of goods and supply came from. India paid for that. Now, you may or may not know that in this case, even though India was not a rich country, it was one of the poorest country, but India had to pay that money, but Australia, Canada, New Zealand, they were all paid from the London Treasury for them to come here. So all the cost was borne by the London Treasury, the British Treasury. But in Indian case, it's the Indian. Now, who's going to pay for that? Indian public. Okay. So this is what we estimate, 800. We're still continuing our research. So we are finding more and more information. So we'll keep revising this figure. But at the moment, it sort of stands at, and now in today's term, I was told by who is a very clever guy in mathematics and so on. So this could be between 70 to 80 billion pounds. That's India's money. Okay, we can't we can't ask them to pay back our money, but we need to understand that we need to sort of know these things. That how much money. Some of you may have watched a debate in Oxford University with Shashi Tharoor, where he asked, I think the topic was reparation. Should the British government or the colonial government should pay a reparation and so on. Now, again, he used these some of these numbers from this data coming out. I think it was released in mid-2014. Okay, so we need to understand manpower, material supply, money coming from India. So that's what Prime Minister said that, then Lord George, in the Parliament, in the sincere gratitude for this wonderful contribution which India has made to finance this war. Okay? But the Viceroy of India had a different view. Or the military people in Mesopotamia, he was saying that war would not have been possible in Mesopotamia unless without India's manpower and economic assistance. So that's a military commander in Mesopotamia, and the Viceroy is worried that the War Office in London is taking everything away from India, and India is struggling, starving as a result of that. And he noted in his diary, which has been come out in a sort of archive and so on, where saying India has been bled white by the War Office. And he was writing a letter challenging the War Office that you can't take the money, you can't take the money. But the War Office has the power over Viceroy over India, so he could not sort of stop that. So you can see the sort of all those millions and millions of material and supply, manpower, and so on. So it's very important to understand. It's the same sort of situation. India is paying for a lot of things, and how three different views. Okay. Now, I just briefly mentioned about the princes. The princes were actually quite positive, helping the British cause. And not only that, but a lot of people ask me why why they were kind of sort of like a racing and competing with each other, that you're going to give me 10 sort of a soldier, I'm going to give you 100 soldiers, and so on. Why? Because of their vested interest. Their vested interest lied with the sort of a colonial government in India. They didn't want sort of anybody replacing the colonial government, because then their sort of so-called empire would disappear as well. So they had a vested interest. But not only that, but the English diplomacy was very clever. One thing you have to give it credit, that English diplomacy is a much sort of strategic in thinking, long-term thinking and so on. So they used to sort of pit one Maharaja against another Maharaja and another state and so on, that, oh, you got an 18-gun salute, right? We can consider giving you 21 salutes. So if you help the king and so forth. So, again, it was like a barter, it's a negotiation and so on. So it's a wonderful sort of history on its own to read it. So estimated around 45 to 50 million direct money, plus the manpower, plus the sort of a state trooper service, was given by India. Now, you may have seen this picture here, right? It's a gift of Nabha, or gift of India, gift of Nabha. The money was given by Maharaja of Nabha to build this hospital ship. The ship was designed in London, Basingstoke, built in Southampton docks. So look at the local history. And it traveled over 12,000 miles and carried over 27,000 wounded soldiers. And after the war, it was auctioned, and Maharaja of Nabha bought this ship back. So he repurchased from his original money he gave for construction, and then he donated that money to the Queen's Charity, with which the Star and Garter building for wounded British soldier, disabled wounded soldier from the war was built in Richmond. Many of, if you have a chance to travel to Richmond, you see that big red brick building. That's a Star and Garter building, which is still today is used for wounded British disabled soldiers. But it doesn't say anymore that this is India's contribution or Maharaja Nabha's contribution. We don't know. We don't know much about our own history there. And the one, I think the scale model is actually in Imperial War Museum. So if you get a chance to go there, look for this one. If you can't see, ask them. They will give you more information about that. So it's also important to understand the connections in various towns, various museums, various archives, where our history is buried. So that, we can learn more about that. Now you see this iconic picture where this French lady is giving this yellow flower to marching soldiers. And there is a myth that Sikh soldiers are marching. They are not all Sikhs. They are Pathans, Sikhs, Baluchis as well. So again, because we are Sikhs, so we would like to latch on to anything good. We feel proud of that. And not only that, but look at what. Okay. That's what Times wrote 100 years ago. Yep. That's the commander of Indian Corps, James Wilcox wrote. Yep. And that's again so there are. I think perhaps you may see a little propaganda poster here where the Belgian children are wearing turban and taunting a German soldier that Sikhs have arrived. So which means, indirectly they're implying that now the sort of Sikh soldier is going to sort of sort you out. So they are taunting a German soldier, so which is a funny thing. So again, so it's a really, really fascinating to understand the sort of what was happening in India and here and so on. So all these little nuggets of information, or cartoons, or propaganda, or we need to look at it. Now, it's not the first time the Indian soldiers came out of India. Indian soldiers actually fought in many campaigns outside India. And just look at the Chinese War, 1860, even well before World War I. Abyssinia War, Malta, Afghan, even Boer War, Indian soldiers, but they were not used to fight on the front, because the Germans objected that they cannot fight with the savages. It's again Christian principle. again, sort of, so they were not used, but but never ever till then, Indian soldiers in that great number fought in Europe. Okay, so then again, sort of arriving at Marseille port, going through the town, and the crowds are sort of coming to welcome them. Now, it's very important, and if you can take away anything from today's talk, just a sort of 2-3 sort of sound bites I would share with you. Now, if you look back, the war started, or war was declared on 4th of August, 1914. 6th of August, War Council sat in London. They immediately asked for Indian help. And then 24th of August, the first contingent from the Lahore Division embarked on 24th of August. 26th of September, they arrived in Marseille, and by 24th of October, they were in trenches. Never ever in the military history such a speedy mobilization at a time when there was no communications, nothing at all, and to sort of inform all the soldiers who may be on holiday, leave or wherever in the villages and so on. So it was never, there's no parallel in military history. Even in the modern time when you have all the communication, everything, the Gulf War, it took us more than a year for preparation. But because it was a speedy mobilization, as a result of that, they were underprepared. They came here in the summer uniforms. You may have seen a lot of pictures here. They came in summer uniform. And because they were the first to arrive, so they paid a very heavy price of these horrific trench wars. Now, many of you have visited France, Flanders, I assume, and so on. You have seen some of those trenches which are very well organized, sandbags and so on. But the early part of the war, those were just like ditches. So on the roadside ditches, you stand there, and it was sort of, the winter was setting in, and the soldiers are standing, their legs are frozen. So, they were suffering the frostbite and so on. There was no cover, nothing at all. That was, it's a very, very horrific and sort of a situation there for those soldiers. On top of that, they didn't have the sort of right equipment. They were given new Lee Enfield rifle on their arrival. Soldiers need practice using their arms. They didn't have the heavy gun for the cover. They were relying upon other British regiments to provide them the cover. They had a 2 machine gun per battalion. So you can see that despite all those odds, not even a single soldier, Indian soldier, Sikh soldier, actually deserted the war, the front. Because it's not in their DNA, it's not in the blood. Once they have bowed to the Guru Granth Sahib, they will give their life, but they will never sort of think, oh, it's not my war, or I don't want to fight and so on. So that was a sort of a spirit which again recognized by British historians as well, and which we know all about. That's Lord Curzon, who then became a sort of a viceroy in India. So that's what he wrote over there. Now, it's not only the first to arrive in Western Front, but also Indian soldiers came under attack at Suez Canal in Middle East, in Egypt. So they were the first one to engage the Turkish forces. Not only that, but also in East Africa, Sikh soldiers were the first one to arrive to pave way for other expeditionary forces to come and join them. Now, that was the time when, and this is important to sort of understand that, the Belgian forces were decimated, the French forces completely destroyed, British forces were at a breaking point. There was no replacement because the British Army, or the Kitchener's Army is known then, was being recruited and trained. So who was available? Indian Army, who was a professional army, trained army. So they, but as a result of that, they just used that, and many historians have written, or you may have read sort of somewhere in a blog or in a sort of article or wherever, Indian soldiers were used like a cannon fodder. That may well be the case. They said nothing, but because the situation was so dire, and the Germans would have advanced. Now the historians are gradually beginning to recognize the contribution of the early and the timing of sort of Indian soldier. Predominantly, they were a Sikh soldier from Meerut Division and 47th Sikhs arriving and plugging the breach wherever the breach was coming from, they were plugging the breach by their bodies, by their life, and so on. So it's very important to understand the contribution, because a lot of historians now are beginning to sort of say that it's because of them we stopped German marching to Calais. Perhaps the history would have been different. So it's very important to understand it's not only the sort of number of casualty or number of battle honors or Victoria Crosses and so on, it's the timing and the context of the war is very, very crucial to understand. So their contribution without training, with being underprepared, and they were fighting at two fronts. They were fighting with the Germans, and they were fighting this winter, which they never sort of faced, and also the trench warfare, which they were not used to, because they were used to and trained for open field warfare and so on. So that's very important. And that's why you have this picture here as well. Now, this is the 47 Sikhs. They were ordered, and you can see that here, behind the tree line, the firing is coming from, because it's a 100-year-old black and white picture. So that's where the German firing coming from, and you can see there's not sort of a high enough vegetation to camouflage and hide. So 444 Sikh soldiers, they were ordered to attack their position, and in one day, 348 Sikh soldiers died in this field. We visited this field in 2015. So this is the photograph, same field, obviously it's a color and so on, trees are grown. So same tree line from the distance. Okay. In this field, 348 Sikh soldiers died. They had no chance. Completely open field. They were like a sort of a sitting duck. But none of them turned back and ran. They just moved forward, kept dying. Okay. Again, nearly 78%. And the biggest challenge for Indian army in Europe at the time is the replacement of soldiers. No army can function without a sort of a smooth supply line to replace the soldier who are wounded, injured, or died. Because the war was so horrific that there was no time, and coming from India for replacement, it was not possible. But also, I think it's worth noting here, is that the British officers who were in India in Sikh regiments, they also fought very bravely. So we need to give the credit where it's due. And they died in great number as well. But as a result of that, there was a vacuum of British officers who actually were sort of local to India. So they were replaced by English officers here, because the policy was not to promote Indian to senior ranks. They were all sort of given mainly junior officer rank and NC and so forth. Yeah. So again, there was a lack of communication.
I've got a question. So many soldiers died there. Presumably, their remains are still there?
No.
Okay.
Many of them who died, they were cremated. Okay. Many bodies couldn't be found. Many bodies, especially Muslims, soldiers and so on, they were buried. And later on, many of those graves were reorganized by Commonwealth Graves Commission again, because the war was such a horrific, and all that bombing and all those shell, sometimes we can't even find the body part, let alone identifying a sort of a person there. So again, but that's the reason why you see the commemoration on the wall. Sometimes either they are cremated in the field in the front, or their body couldn't be found. But the record exists that they died in the war. And we'll look at some of those analysis of those numbers as well. And again, the commanding officer of Indian Corps, James Wilcox, that's what he wrote. It was the dark days for Indian soldiers, because the odds, they faced mortars, hand grenade, high explosive shell, which they did not have provided. They could only rely on their valor. What was their valor? Is that ethos of their sort of service. They're going to die for their cause, what they have vowed for in front of the Guru Granth Sahib, but they will never turn their back again. Yeah. So that was at the environment in a sort of in which they fought. So you look at the sort of odds for them, and these are the early part of the war. Later, when the war sort of progressed and so on, then it started beginning to become more mechanized, and then the nature of the warfare changed and so on. Nature of the formation started changing. That's another sort of topic and subject. Now, this is another sort of a picture which an English officer, based upon the sort of a description in his diary, artist created this picture where a Sikh soldier, his fellow soldiers, has been injured and sitting here, wounded, right? And the 8-9 German soldier, this Sikh soldier alone killed 8 soldiers, and he's holding the last soldier on gunpoint. Now that is based upon the description in an English officer diary in this story. So you can see the courage there. You can sort of see the sort of maximum guns, on their shoulders, carrying the sort of front and feet. So they were brave people, and we need to be proud of them. Some of the pictures, I won't take a long time, because you'll see this in exhibition, cavalry charging here. That's a downtime in a barn where English and Indian soldiers are sort of there. Now, that's an interesting one. When I was doing a research at National Archive, I came across these maps, what you call multilingual maps. And before that, it never occurred to me that how Indian cavalry was moving around in France. They couldn't speak English, let alone French. So how were they moving? They were moving around with the help of these operational maps, which were created specially for them. And you can see here sort of a little bit below, written, the name of the place is written in Punjabi, Urdu, Hindi. And you can see the Hudson Horse 9th Scouts, one of the soldiers is consulting this type of map. And they were sitting in National Archive in London for 100 years, nobody knew about anything. So when we found out, I said, well, that's a wonderful, because this belongs to our history, heritage. We need to sort of bring it out to the public. We need to show them. Otherwise, you don't think that how they were moving around in an alien land, thousands of miles away from home. They can't even speak the language. Okay. That's again Gallipoli, Mesopotamia. Now, Indian pilots, you all have perhaps know about Hardeep Singh Maring, who was a young student in Oxford, Bellaroi College here. Wonderful golfer, wonderful cricket player. He played for Sussex and so on. And when he wanted to join the RFC, Royal Flying Corps, he was refused because they said, we cannot give a commission to non-white. So he went to France to serve it, and then his professor wrote a letter to RFC, and he said, well, hang on. Then he was invited back to join RFC. So he was the first Indian to join Royal Flying Corps. And he was trained in Aldershot. Okay. There was another 3 pilots. 2 of these pilots were trained in Reading. Okay. Now this building is in Reading University. BBC did a report based upon our research. In 2015, they did a report on this is the Vantage Hall. You can see this gate. And a military vehicle. So 100 years ago, this building was used as a school of military aeronautics. So now we did a research on the university archives of this building, and we found out the school curriculum, the military sort of aeronautics school curriculum. So we know what the pilots were taught at the time. And those 2 pilots were trained in Reading. And again, Indralal Roy here, the first DFC, Indian DFC, which is a Distinguished Flying Cross, is the equivalent to Victoria Cross in the army and so on. Again, only Hardeep Singh Malik survived the war, and he had an illustrious career as a diplomat, as a sort of a prime minister of Patiala state, as well as sort of he was a high commissioner and so on. And he was a very successful in what he has contributed, not as a soldier pilot, but also as a career diplomat. He was instrumental in getting the sort of a citizen for Indians in Canada post 47. Without him and his efforts, because the Indians were not given citizenship till then in 1947. You all heard or read the story of Kamagata Maru and so on. So you can see the linkages, how history links. Baba Gurdit hiring a sort of chartering a plane, Kamagata Maru going to Vancouver, not being allowed to walk, and then Hardeep Singh Malli is posted as a High Commissioner in Canada, putting a pressure on Canadian government that India will not have a relationship with you unless you allow Indians. And before that, the Parliament passed a law, Canada is for whites only, like Australia. So if you talk to sort of Indians living in those country, and if you learn their history, they have struggled. So that's another sort of story. Okay. Now, many of you may already know sort of a Royal Pavilion, which was used for a hospital. And the General Hospital in Brighton today was known as Kitchener's Army's Indian Hospital. And there were many, there was a York School, there was Bournemouth and other places where the hospital were used for Indian soldiers there. And after the war, Maharaja Patiala, Bhupinder Singh sort of unveiling this. So that's Bhupinder Singh, and this is the gate. When you go there from entrance to the pavilion there, you can see there. And here's a wonderful picture of soldiers kind of sort of enjoying their sun, perhaps a rare sun in those days, and so on. This is a wonderful painting, oil painting of Music Hall of the Royal Pavilion. And we have these permission to sort of print these photographs, this painting here in this book as well. This is a watercolor. You can look at the dome. Now, if you read the newspaper, the newspaper, you can sort of understand the propaganda at the time, where the king has vacated his palace for Indian soldiers. When that was not the case, it was already empty, and there was no other building to accommodate that many soldiers. But how you spin it, right? We very well know from sort of today's politicians, kind of thing. So, same thing 100 years ago. On the flip side, there was a picture published in a local paper where a white nurse standing at the sort of a bedside of an Indian soldier, and the right-wing press and the media and the polity made a sort of a lot of fuss that how come a white nurse is working for Indian soldiers. So that was a mindset. So the racism was very rife 100 years ago. This is important to understand that here, as you say. Now, some of the war memorials, many of them perhaps you already know. Neuchapelle, Chhatri Memorial, you know that India Gate. When you go to India Gate, sort of Amar Jawan, Jyoti, and so on. But originally, it was unveiled for World War I. That's need to understand. Perhaps, many of you went there, Eep, and at the back of that, so this three-sided line, symbol of India, this Basra, 33,000 soldiers. Recently, you may have seen a stamp published by Israel of Haifa of Sikh soldier. Right? This is just a sort of a flavor, but it tells it's a different story altogether, where Indian and the Sikh soldier fought and died, and where they are commemorated. And let's look at some of the. That's a Chhatri Memorial, unveiled in 1921. Yep, that's so every second Sunday every June, a service takes place at Chhatri Memorial in Patcham Down, here Brighton. If we haven't been to there, I would suggest that perhaps take a coach there, make a program, and go there second Sunday in June. Very somber ceremony. It's not a very formal. Again, this, which is not very far from Coventry, I believe, Staffordshire, Arbitrary. So this was unveiled recently. So that was we generally go every year there. That's one of my colleague, Captain Gill, there, and that's the Indian High Commissioner and the Lord Lieutenant of Sussex, and High Sheriff and so on. So it's very important to understand our own sort of heritage, and that's the reason I ask sort of 3 or 4 people raise their hand of how often we get involved in these civic events. It's very important to sort of go there in good numbers, great numbers, all right, so that people can understand that our significant contribution. But somehow we feel, no, TV jageh baithe kaun rede swere swere. So that's the kind of sort of mindset, when I talk to people, oh, Paji, thand si swere aaya nahi hai, things like that. So I think we need to make an effort. Those people have given their life to us for our cause. Now, these and here, even though we are talking about World War I, but to put any things in a context, I will put World War II data as well, because our next project, we are also working on a World War II as well. And as Balbir Pandey mentioned, that for posterity, we need to document our own history, especially the oral history. And this is one of the sort of our project. We are recording oral history. Whosoever can provide us a sort of information, because we need to preserve it for future generation and so on. Now, look at that. 403 cemeteries in 35 countries. These are some of the sort of top 5, 6 cemeteries, where the biggest one is in Basra, then India Gate. India Gate, where they didn't die there in India, but they could not be found, or their body couldn't be found, and so on. So whosoever were left over were commemorated in India Gate there. That's the number. World War II, look at sort of Delhi War Memorial. World War II was not fought in Delhi. Again, but then you look at the Burma, Rangoon, Singapore, and so on. So that is sort of is another story. It tells you the sort of reach where the Indian soldiers, Sikh soldiers fought. There in this book, we have a chapter on sort of a Sikh soldiers in sort of every war front where they fought, and many of the sort of names who were given awarded Indian Order of Merit or IDSM and so on, their bravery and so on. Again, okay. So it's now if you take away the British numbers and look comparison of the dominions, India's even the sort of a sacrifice in World War I and World War II was higher than any other dominion country. That's important to understand that. Okay. And again, that's a documented fact where the Corps commander, he says that when I am, in other sort of his article, he wrote that when I am with a Sikh soldier, I can sleep. So that was the confidence he had in sort of a Sikh soldier ability, that they won't let him down. Now, this number is kind of sort of used everywhere. 83,000 Sikh soldiers died and so forth, kind of thing. But that number actually is significantly higher, which we have proved from our research with the Commonwealth Grace Commission data and record and so on. But because this is a kind of sort of used by an army journal at the time, so every channel, every media, everything, we quote this number. But the actual number was significantly higher than that. Now,
what are your estimates on that number?
We are still working on World War II, but we reckon sort of it was around 89 to 94,000, based upon the sort of current data available, and that can go up. And USI in India actually is making a representation to the Commonwealth Grace Commission to revise their numbers. Don't forget that these numbers provided by the Commonwealth Grace Commission, their headquarters is in Maidenhead here, right? So they are not fully recorded, because if they are missing in action and so on, so they disappear. But when you start adding war by war by war through the diaries, war diaries, because the war diaries religiously record how many soldiers died every day and so on, when you add them together, number is significantly high. So there is a project which is working on that side with the Commonwealth Grace Commission and so on. And that's very true. They gave their today for our tomorrow. Okay. Now let's look at the impact. The economy, the trade of India was curtailed significantly, because many of their export market collapsed. All the sort of trade with Germany, with Austria, that collapsed. Again, wholesale prices rose, wheat prices by 100%, millet prices by 132% in India. Now, these are not very glamorous number, but the impact of that in India was very significant on a common person. That's the point we're trying to make, that it's a rise in taxation, because India is a low-based taxation country, and bulk of the tax was on landowners and how much you can squeeze. So again, there was a revolt there. A lot of people say, oh, Indian rupee and a pound was, or dollar was the same price 100 years ago. How come now pound is 1 and Indian rupee is 90 or whatever it is, and so on. Looking at the history, so how the money was devalued for all these major events throughout in the last century, and that's the reason why, the economic reason. So the gold reserves were depleted, because again, you saw the figures of money used to finance the war there. Paper currency increased because much of the gold currency, gold reserves were transferred to the British treasury here to underpin the war there, and India was left. So the currency was devalued there, which means is that the purchasing power is less for Indian population. So these are the consequences and the effect of the war, which again is hidden, not seen. So the Indian public suffered. Right? Indian economy went bankrupt, nearly went bankrupt in World War I. Nobody writes about that because that's not glamorous. Layoff after the war. So what happened to this sort of this 1.5 million army when they came back? Demobilization, layoff, unemployment, all those severe depression at the time, famine. We don't hear about those things. Historians are not worried. They are either worried about the political side of it, or the military people are worried about the numbers and medals and all those sort of history. War is, we can't glorify a war. We need to understand social and political impact. Because of the high demand of all the material and the supply shipped from India, how they managed that? The government set up a munition board, which were given the authority to take away all the supplies from a factory towards the war effort. So which means is that they were were duty bound to provide to the army first, and whatever is left over goes to the public consumption. Okay, and this is a man-made famine, epidemic, Spanish flu. Strikes. How often you hear about strikes were happening 100 years ago in India? Okay, famine riots happening in India, right? Agrarian rest, where the farmers stopped supplying to the market because they were not getting the right price for their produce and so on. So it was a complete disaster, economic disaster at the time, 100 years ago. And but also on the plus side, all of a sudden, people found this new pride that we are something. We need our own stake, our own country, and so on. And that was World War I was a significant in Indian history. Before that, it's only the educated elite who were talking about self-rule, self-governance at the time, and so on. People in the rural area, they were poor. They were relying on the seasonal jobs and agrarian society and so on. They were not worried about we need independence and so on. But that awareness, that conscious awareness, which again awakened people both in rural area as well as in urban areas, that no, we need independence. That was World War I. And we all know about Rowlatt Act. Immediately after the war was finished, Rowlatt Act, Jallianwala Bagh happened. That was a black day in Indian history. And there is a picture here, perhaps here and then and there, right? Which actually shows the contrast that people were here celebrating that they can go back to their normal life, but our freedom struggle started there. Now, what did the World War I did for India? It exposed the mismanagement of Indian economy by the British government. It exposed the Yeah, you can have it as a 10 pound. Yeah, just give it to the lady over there. Yeah. So it's very important to sort of understand that impact. And that was the time when a British businessman was incentivized. So you invest £1, Indian government will give them a £1. They were given the rights to set the prices, set the labor policies, which means they exploit the labor in India, and whatever profit they want to make. As a result of that, many of these stately homes you see in this country become very rich at the expense of Indian population. So we need to do further research. Those connections, those business people who operated in India in sort of those years. Okay. Now, soldiers, what their experiences, basically they were not very happy because the army do not fight here and there and everywhere, and you just push them where the breach is and so on. They have a set pattern of brigade formation and so on, the training and how they sort of move forward and so on, how they prepare for the battle. But situation was so dire, and this is what I was trying to sort of highlight there. The British historians have failed to recognize the sort of timing of arrival of Indian soldiers on the continent, and it's because of their sacrifices, early sacrifices, because there was no British army left to replace with them. There was no French army, there is no Belgian army. It's very important to understand. It still faced prejudices. Not only that, but I mentioned one example of Brighton Hospital and so on. They were not allowed to go on their own in the town to venture out. They were escorted by the British chaperone and so on. Even the bravery recognition. When you start reading the war diaries, you realize is that it's the Indian soldiers are dying, Sikh soldiers are dying, but the credit goes to the chief. Everybody knows about John Smythe for history. We sort of very proudly display, Sikh soldier. But where is the recognition for those Sikh soldiers? We need to ask the question. And there was a very subtle impact. All these nationalities converging maybe against each other or maybe fighting together. All of a sudden, sort of a Sikh soldier fighting alongside with many other nationalities, fighting against many nationalities, predominantly Germans and Australians and so on, and Turkish. And he is looking at the social system here, looking at the society here, and then he's asking the question himself, why my daughter can't be educated? The women here then, even 100 years ago, had more freedom here on the continent than back home in India. So as an impact or as a subtle sort of impact of World War I, the social change began to emerge where the people in the rural areas started asking those questions. And we don't have enough research in this area to document that evolution, that change happening in a society. And all of a sudden, we skip sort of straight away, comes to the freedom struggle and so on. So we need to do more research. Now, that was an early thought process in Indian polity that, British won't do to us. They have promised self-rule. They are themselves fighting for their own freedom. So how can they deny us our own freedom for self-rule? That was a very naive kind of sort of, but that's a lot of people said that and noted in magazines, in articles, and so on. So they had a faith, perhaps a blind faith, but that turned out not to be the case. Is that now? And it's a hindsight is always better, but sort of. So that's what the Indian public and the political masses sort of felt, that this jewel in the crown, because the British media then was perpetuating this loyal India. You have seen loyal India posters, loyal India concept. They kept perpetuating for the reason that they want to sort of these are like a sweetener to the Indian politician, Indian media, Indian public, and so on. Okay. I think the historians in India are still grappling because all of a sudden people have completely forgotten to focus in this area, right? But predominant view, collective view, is that it was a war of futility, meaninglessness, caused by accident, led by incompetent and sadistic and hypocritical army generals and politicians, but fought by decent yet deluded soldiers who endured horrendous deprivation and unrelenting hardship of, frozen, and their legs are amputated because of the frost and so forth, ultimately dying alienated. And so that sums up. It was a horrific war and a slaughter at a sort of at an industrial scale. So we can never glorify, but I think what we need to do as a sort of a community is to recognize our contribution, recognize the bravery of those soldiers, and do not get involved into this. This was not our war or their war or whatever it was. They were our people, came from our homeland, and give them their recognition, which is due to them. And
that's an important point that you just raised there.
Yeah.
Because what I found a lot of, especially doing research on this area for the last couple of weeks, there's a lot of, on social media in particular, it's a very contentious issue in World War I, whether we should recognise it or put up statues and that type of thing, and are we being what do they call it? When we're like loyal to the British or whatever. And I think what you've just said there is probably the most important thing.
Yep.
It's about giving the recognition to those people who went through those hardships, and that's important because we realise that historians won't tell the story.
Nope.
Even in modern day times, organisations like BBC won't tell the story.
Yep.
It's important for us to tell our story,
Yep.
so that the future generations
Yep.
will get the truth.
Yep. And that's the reason why we started this project of learning ourselves, researching ourselves, and we can share with everyone else and so on, so that you can tell 10 people can tell. So it's like a WhatsApp message. And second thing, I always believe, never get involved in argument on this sort of this issue, particular issues, because the people who argue generally are ignorant. They haven't studied the history. They don't even understand the context of history. So what's the point of sort of ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਮੂਰਖ ਬੰਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਮੱਥਾ ਟਾਕੇ ਤੇ ਆਪ ਹੀ ਸਿਰ ਦਰਦੀ ਲੈਣੀ ਹੈ so our role is to focus on our heritage, do the research with the facts and figures. So these facts and figures don't lie. These facts and figures speak different story than actually what people put on a blog or social media and so on. That is not our history. That's not our heritage. And don't believe in many of these even own Sikh websites who just do cut and paste. There's no real research behind it. So that's what my experience is, that sort of, do your homework yourself and then you will learn more. And you want to learn more. This is what we found. We started in 2015 and we're still continuing doing our research there. So that's, again, now this is nothing to do with the World War I, but perhaps that answer the question, very pertinent question you raised. Why people sort of focus on Indian war post-47. Now here's the MOD data of all the wars and operations and the mission, UN missions post-independence of India. Very enlightening reading. Now, around 12,000 soldiers died. Yep. Yeah, obviously that number has changed because I put asterisk there, which is the 99 data and so on. Now, look at World War I and II. Even if you take the popular figure of 83,000, compare that with the 12,000. And 12,000 is all Indian soldiers, including Sikh soldiers. And 83,000 is just a Sikh soldier alone died. So who do you recognize? We need to recognize all of them. But we can't differentiate that it was not our war. They were our people. Otherwise, it defeats the whole object. You are discriminating, that you are telling them they are not Sikh, so we won't recognize you. They were Sikh. They were perhaps more staunch Sikhs than we can imagine there. Right. So it's very, very important to understand that, as I say. So it's generally, I don't sort of show that, but for Sikh communities, it's very important to understand that it put things in perspective. Well, just summing up, now historians are beginning to realize that without all that manpower, money, supplies, material, and so on, perhaps would have been very difficult to win the war. So India's contribution was very significant. That need to be recognized. Again, very few people in the West, and even fewer people in India, know about history, because that has been completely erased from both countries' history. It's sad that the country they fought for have ignored them, and the country they came from completely forgotten about them. So it is our responsibility living in these countries is that we don't forget, and hence that's the reason Remembrance Sunday or in June, if you can attend this ceremony, encourage young people, encourage children to go and visit there, they will feel proud of that. So this, okay. So yeah, and it's our freedom collectively, not our community freedom. And this is the point we need to make it to the mainstream community: is that look, these are the numbers, these are the facts, these are the figures. And when I did a talk in September for Dunstan Association, and his Wilfred Dunstan was a war poet 100 years ago, and they were astonished to see these figures and these facts. And an old lady, after my talk, came to me. She must be sort of 85 plus and so on. Very slowly, she came to me and said, "I'm ashamed to be British." That's what she said to me. I said, "No, you don't need to be ashamed. My job is not to put you to the shame, but is to make aware of you the facts and figures, and collectively we need to recognize that contribution." Okay. Now, there's a wonderful letter a soldier wrote to his family, sitting and recovering on his bed in Brighton Hospital, that if I die here, who will remember me? And perhaps I think you got a title here somewhere, is there. Okay, if I die here. Now, there's a wonderful poem by Sarojini Naidu, and I will just read few lines which are very pertinent. Right? Gathered like pearls in their alien graves, silent they sleep by the Persian waves, scattered like shells on Egyptian sands. They lie with pale brows and brave broken hands. They are strewn like blossoms mown down by chance on the blood-brown meadows of Flanders and France. And you honor the deeds of the deathless ones. Remember the blood of thy mortal sons. If we don't know our history, how can we look forward for the future? Okay, thank you very much.